encouraged to contact their local Colorado Workforce Center for help finding qualified candidates. After engaging with our business community, we have adjusted the eligibility requirements for the Colorado Jumpstart program. The program is available to claimants who return to gainful employment between May 16th and June 26th of this year. This includes workers who return to part-time work as long as the employment is similar or equal to the employment they had before filing for their unemployment claim. This will accommodate many restaurant and hospitality workers who often work part-time. Claimants will not be able to collect partial unemployment benefits and the incentive payment. It's imperative to note that this is not like any other recession we've been in the past. There are many health, safety, and childcare reasons Coloradans could still have hesitancy to return to work that fall outside the financial burden. We don't want to place families in a difficult position of deciding whether or not to pay the bills or put the health of their families at risk. We won't be ending the federal unemployment supplements and extensions before they're set to expire in September. Getting Colorado workers back in the workforce is always a top priority for the department, and we will continue to do everything we can to ensure the state has a thriving employment environment where both workers and employers can prosper and begin recovering from the economic impacts of COVID-19. We also adopted a new emergency rule early this month designed to strengthen claimants' work search activities. The rule allows us to disqualify claimants from receiving unemployment benefits for failing to show up to a scheduled interview or other scheduled pre-employment activities unless the claimant can verify reasonable justification for the specific failure. This rule was put in place after we got feedback from employers and other partners in other states that candidates were scheduling interviews and then not showing up just to fulfill their work search requirements. We've also heard about candidates giving incorrect contact information to hiring managers, so they have no way of getting in touch with them with the candidate to offer them a job, allowing the claimant to avoid reporting a job refusal. Employers are encouraged to report no-shows and job referrals to us via our online job refusal form at coloradoui.gov. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our senior economist, Ryan Gentry, to go over April employment situations. As we do that, I encourage you to chat your questions into the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation this morning. Ryan?
Thanks, Joe, and thanks everyone for joining on this lovely Friday morning. The data I will discuss today are based in part on estimates from two surveys. Statistics like the unemployment rate, labor force, total employment, and the number of unemployed are derived from a survey of households, otherwise known as the current population survey. Simply put, the household survey is meant to capture the employment and labor force status of individuals within Colorado during a given period. And the household survey also includes the self-employed, independent contractors, farm workers, and those not attached to a traditional payroll employer. However, we are unable to break out those individuals at the state level. Non-farm payroll job estimates come from a survey of business establishments and government agencies and are intended to measure the number of jobs, not the number of people employed. These estimates exclude employees in agriculture, private households, and the self-employed. As we noted in today's press release, the reference period for the establishment and household surveys was the pay period or week that includes the 12th of the month. Therefore, these data provide a snapshot of Colorado's employment situation as vaccination rates among the adult population continue to increase, and additional capacity restrictions were relaxed for businesses across the state. Revisions to April data, along with preliminary estimates for May, will be released Friday, June 18th. Additionally, expected revisions to fourth quarter non-farm payroll jobs, that press release will go out Wednesday. For the results from the household survey, Colorado's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate was unchanged in April, and that's been fixed at 6.4% for the last 3 months. The flat unemployment rate is due to the labor force and total employment growing at similar amounts since January. The gap between the state and U.S. unemployment rates narrowed in April as the nation's rate moved up 1/10 of a percentage point to 6.1%. In April, Colorado was tied with Delaware for the 35th lowest unemployment rate in the nation. 4 states had the lowest rates at 2.8%, and Hawaii had the highest rate at 8.5%. As I have highlighted in prior press calls, the share of Colorado's population actively participating in the labor force means they're either employed or they're seeking employment. This is known as the labor force participation rate. This has rapidly recovered compared to most of the nation for Colorado, which is very positive in my opinion. The labor force participation rate hit an important milestone in April, returning to a pre-pandemic rate of 68.7%. That rate of 68.7% was tied with South Dakota for the second highest in the nation last month. In comparison, the US participation rate was 61.7% in April. Additionally, Colorado is now one of only 7 states to have fully regained their pre-pandemic participation rate. Colorado was tied with Massachusetts for the 6th fastest recovery in the labor force participation rate. When you compare April's rate to the rate it was in February 2020, again, which was a 68.7% rate pre-pandemic. As we mentioned in today's press release, the counties with the highest not seasonally adjusted unemployment rates were San Miguel, Huerfano, Pueblo, Gilpin, Costilla, and Fremont. 17 Colorado counties had April unemployment rates that were under 5%, the majority of which are concentrated on the eastern part of the state. Among the 7 metropolitan areas in the state, Pueblo had the highest unemployment rate at 8.6%. Boulder and Fort Collins had the lowest rates at 5.5% respective, or I think both had 5.5% rates. Denver, Colorado Springs, Greeley, and Grand Junction all had rates between 6.4 and 6.8%. It is recommended to compare all the sub-state rates I mentioned to the statewide not seasonally adjusted unemployment rate, which was 6.3% in April. Shifting over to the establishment survey, the preliminary estimates show that on a seasonally adjusted basis, Colorado added 17,000 non-farm payroll jobs from March to April. Additionally, March payroll figures were revised up by 1,100 jobs, which altered the change from February to a gain of 7,700 rather than the originally estimated 6,600. As a reminder, monthly revisions are based on additional responses from businesses and government agencies since the last published estimates. Colorado's over-the-month change of 17,000 non-farm payroll jobs ranked as the 3rd largest nationally in April. Only New York and California had bigger absolute job gains last month. The state has added 64,200 payroll jobs in the first 4 months of 2021. That ranks as the 10th most jobs gained so far in 2021. Colorado has now regained 247,700 of the 375,800 non-farm payroll jobs lost in March and April of last year. The total job gains of 247,700 over the past 12 months represent a recovery of around 66% of those lost jobs earlier in the year. And that ranks as the 23rd fastest rate of recovery in the nation over that period. A similar analysis of the change in U.S. non-farm payroll jobs since April revealed the U.S. has added back a little over 63% of lost jobs. At the sector level, a number of industries had positive gains in April, and only a few industries experienced relatively minor losses. Leisure and hospitality had a sizable increase last month, adding nearly 10,000 payroll jobs. Within that industry, accommodation and food services gains totaled 7,200, while arts, entertainment, and recreation payrolls grew by 2,700. 3 other super sectors added at least 1,000 jobs last month. Private education and health services added 2,900 jobs, although that was mainly driven by the health component of that industry. Other services and government both increased by 1,800 jobs respectively, with local and state education primarily driving the gains for government. In the first 4 months of 2021, when looking at the state's 18 industry sectors, accommodation and food services has added the most jobs at 37,900, or 59% of all total non-farm payroll jobs added during that period. Government has the second most gains at 5,200, while arts, entertainment, and recreation and private healthcare and social assistance have both added around 4,500 jobs since December. On the other hand, retail trade payroll numbers are flat in the first third of the year, while information, finance and insurance, and construction have experienced varying levels of job loss. Overall, the private sector added 15,200 jobs in April, while March payroll numbers were revised up an additional 600 jobs. From May 2020 to April or last month, private businesses have added 257,200 payroll jobs compared to losses of 362,200 in March and April of last year. That represents a recovery of 71% of private sector jobs lost earlier in the year, which outpaces the US recovery rate of 67%. Colorado's private sector job recovery rate ranks as the 18th fastest in the nation. And only 3 other states added more private sector jobs in April than Colorado. As I've mentioned in previous calls, here are the recovery rates for substate Colorado, specifically the 7 metropolitan statistical areas, or MSA, and also the remaining residual of the state that is not in an MSA. Colorado Springs at 79% and Fort Collins at 70% had the fastest job recovery rates through April of the seven MSAs. Denver at 66% and Grand Junction at 65% have recovery rates similar to that of the state. Again, that was 66%. And the recovery rates for Boulder, Pueblo, and Greeley lag the rest of the states. And Boulder's recovery rate is 51%, Pueblo 50%, and Greeley 31%. And as always, we'll send out talking points that I'm going through right now. And there are also charts within the press release packet that also contain this data. Now, I've mentioned before that we do not break out non-farm payroll jobs by county. We can look at a recovery rate for the residual of the state that is not in an MSA. And that basically aggregates to what we can define as 47 non-metro counties. Those areas shed a combined total of 59,300 payroll jobs in early 2020, but have regained back 42,100, or 71% of those lost jobs. Non-metro Colorado has added 4,900 payroll jobs in the first 4 months of 2021. And finally, I'd like to talk about a recent hot topic, labor supply. So yes, we've heard through the media many anecdotal stories about labor shortages and spikes in job openings. However, data the department analyzes show that while unique monthly Colorado online job postings are growing, the current volume lags pre-pandemic levels, basically looking at mid-2019 or early 2020. The recent upward trend in job postings are not surprising and reflect increased consumer demand, which then translates into demand for labor, as most business restrictions and capacity caps have been either loosened or lifted over the past few months. Additionally, the recent job gains in April of 17,000 and 64,200 in total since December, that demonstrates that at a net aggregate level, Colorado employers are significantly adding to their payrolls. As I mentioned previously, the accommodation and food services industry, again, think hotels and restaurants, added 7,200 jobs last month and nearly 38,000 in the first 4 months of 2021. While federal UI benefits and weekly FPUC payments have been suggested as possible reasons why employers are presently not able to fill openings quickly, I'd like to offer some counter arguments as well as recommendations on other points to consider when discussing labor supply tightness. First, the relationship between unemployment and filling job vacancies is very different now than in prior recessions, mainly because we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. Structurally, this is a vastly different recession and road to recovery that Colorado and the nation experienced during the Great Recession and the early 2000s recession. Second, there will be an unavoidable disconnect between the demand for labor from employers and the supply of that labor from workers or employees. This can be highlighted by a simple timing issue. consumer demand for goods and services have increased since February, March. And that can be tied back to many factors. Multiple rounds of federal relief, improving weather, loosened business restrictions and capacity caps, relatively lower incidences of COVID-19 cases, and wider rates of vaccinations among the adult population. However, while older adults have had vaccination options for a while, vaccinations were not widely available to the 16 plus Colorado population until about the beginning of April. This could impact the labor supply of industries like restaurants, who rely on a relatively younger population of workers than most industries. For instance, in 2019, over 60% of restaurant workers were under the age of 35. That's compared to a ratio of around 35% for all industries. Younger job seekers could be hesitant on looking for or accepting a job that has high public exposure, like restaurants, if they're not fully vaccinated. Some younger individuals may also still be in school. That could also remove a potential labor pool until the school season has finished. That could apply to like high school, college, those kind of things. Third, keep in mind that not all job vacancies are filled by those receiving unemployment benefits. For example, vacancies can also be filled by job switchers, new entrants to the labor force, so think students, re-entrants to the labor force, and those who have recently moved to the state. And then finally, I recommend considering these following points when discussing potential difficulty employers may be facing in filling job vacancies. How is the job being advertised? So method, reach. What is the wage, salary being offered? Is that clear in the job posting? What are the hours? What does the schedule look like? Is that schedule variable or fixed on a week-to-week basis? If someone has a child who has a hybrid or fully remote school schedule, how does that parent work in a job that is not remote? Basically means they have to go in person, have in-person interaction. And finally, if the employee gets sick or has to miss time, what kind of health benefits and personal leave options are available? I'm going to kick it over to Phil right now, but I will field questions after Phil is done with his part. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you all for joining us today on our pre-avalanche victory press conference today. So what I want to bring up with all of you is a reminder we've had multiple discussions in the past related to fraudulent activity and unemployment insurance claims, which we knocked down some of that fraudulent activity going on through the implementation of ID.me. What has happened, however, now is, again, remember those fraudsters are persistent, if nothing. So now they have changed some of their tactics in order to try to, again, be able to hijack individuals' claims who have successfully passed through ID.me. So as a note, we've seen a number of phishing scams that are circulating recently that spoof our emails and even our call center number. And in fact, at the very beginning of this press call, I actually received a text message with yet another one that is a spoof text message sent to individuals. So we need your help in this area to get this word out to individuals to ensure that they are not texting on links or touching links within a text message or with an email message. These scams are preying on those unemployment claimants and others to try to get them to hand over their personal information. And so we'd like to remind the claimants and all of you that we never send out links via text message. So anytime you get a link within the text message, you should never click on that link. If you receive a link within an email, you should never click on that link. If you have any doubt about your claim, you should access your unemployment insurance claim the way you normally did. In other words, how you filed it directly through our website and at MyUI Plus Colorado. And so these email spoofs are becoming very believable. So look very closely at the URLs on these links before clicking them. They're often off by only a few letters. The one I received this morning is a little easier to check on, that it clearly doesn't look like it's from us, as it has CDLE in reverse or in the improper order. Please note that as we become aware of these websites, we work to get them shut down. And we shut down several of these websites a week. We had one yesterday, and we are currently working on one that I just became aware of, as I noted at the top of this call right now. So always check the sender's email address. Our emails come from CDLE_UI@state.co.us. And again, we can put that in the chat here for those of you to keep reminding people, always look for that URL on an email from us. The more obvious phishing emails have broken English and misspellings. If an individual is not expecting a callback from us, because again, now they are also trying to act through callback information. If you're not expecting a callback from us, don't hand over your personal information. If you have scheduled a callback with us through the virtual assistant, remember one of the things that virtual assistant asked you to provide as a claimant was a 3-digit code that could be provided to you by staff upon calling you back to verify that you were speaking with somebody with the UI division. The best way for claimants to protect themselves is always to log into their accounts by navigating to MyUI Plus through our official website at coloradoui.gov. And we have screenshots of examples of scams that we have seen on our UI Daily Dashboard scam page. So again, we ask people to take a look there to see if any of those are texts or emails that they may have received. And that is updated on a regular basis and will be updated with the new one that I had received yet at the very beginning of this press conference. So at this time, I think we're going to hand it over and see if anyone has any questions today.
Yeah, and Jessica, are you going to facilitate that for us, or do you want me to try to go through that?
Sure. I think Wayne has a question or a couple questions for Ryan. Ryan, do you see Wayne's question about postings pre-pandemic versus now?
I do. Wayne, I just sent you a response. So one source we use is EMSI. They use job spidering techniques. There's a ton of different companies who do this. We're just looking at April 2021. We're looking at Colorado online job postings. Again, unique job postings. They really try to make an effort to duplicate some postings, which can be logistically difficult. But in April 2021, about 256,000 postings. When we look at July 2019, pre-pandemic, that peaked at 346,000 postings. Just looking at like January 2020, they report 288,000 postings. Really, the postings numbers kind of bottomed out, relatively speaking, in September of 2020, around 216,000. So yeah, we're certainly seeing an increase. It's just like a gradual increase. It's interesting that it really is showing different trends than what we're seeing nationally for the JOLTS survey, which was through March. So the JOLTS survey shows a real big uptick for the U.S. We're not going to have Colorado local data from the JOLTS survey. That's through an experimental series. That's going to be much later in the year. So I really don't have a comparison from the JOLTS survey yet, but hopefully that kind of gives you that frame, Wayne.
Jessica, I'll kind of answer some of the questions in regards to the Colorado Jumpstart program. The intent of the program is to help people make the decision to go to work when it's safe and they're able and available to work. And so that's our primary intent, to help people financially as they make that decision. Sometimes there's a delay of a week, 2 weeks, or even a month before they get their first paycheck. There's expenses returning to work. So that's the intent. We know of the people, the 138 that could be eligible, they still have valid healthcare, childcare, or other reasons to not return to work. And so not everyone will be able to go to work in the month of May and June. So we'll continue to have people on unemployment or filing claims week over week. Just like we had unemployment people pre-pandemic, there were people on unemployment insurance. We've had several companies non-pandemic related that have closed down, and they have to apply for unemployment insurance that have nothing to do with the pandemic economic recession. And so we'll continue to have new claims for various reasons, and unemployment insurance is there for that purpose. If we do exceed our expectations, we will ask for more money to make sure that we can pay those people who take advantage of the Colorado Jumpstart program. The governor has made that commitment. I need to let you know, as people return to work and they choose not to file unemployment insurance claims week over week, let's just say in the month of May, we have 10,000 people take advantage of Colorado Jumpstart. They get $1,600 out of the federal CARES Act money and federal funds. They're not tapping into the trust fund. If that same 10,000 people were using state trust fund money, or even using some of the extensions in the federal program, that would be about $28 million compared to $16 million that the Jumpstart program is paying out. So, there's some help to employers who pay into the premium when people go back to work, because we're not in deficit spending to make those borrowing, I should say, to make those payments. And so we really think it's an opportunity not only for the workers, but our employers in Colorado to help with some of the pain they've seen over the last 14 months as they have to pay these premiums from the trust fund on an ongoing basis. And you're right. I think Carolyn had the question about, there are childcare concerns. Childcare was devastated, and a lot of childcare opportunities and centers haven't opened fully. There's still virtual and hybrid learning going on. We're going into summer months, and so childcare could be an issue, specifically as women and younger people who are primarily in the service industry continue to struggle with making the decision or even having the opportunity to return to work.
Yeah, and Joe, I think those are both good points that you provided on these answers. So I also want to mention that even though 138,000 may qualify, as Joe has discussed today, there are various reasons why individuals are not able to currently return to work. There would be another assumption there too, is that some individuals may not be returning to some of the jobs offered because their skill sets do not meet the skill set of those positions that are offered. So a reminder, we want people in gainful employment, people accepting suitable employment, which is of the same or similar nature to what they had at the time in which they became unemployed. So again, that's also going to impact some of those numbers that you will see, Charles and Carolyn.
Okay, I think I have a couple questions if you guys don't mind me getting through these. So Tamara, yeah, so if you're looking for the number of individuals in the labor force, I can give you those. So for April of 2021, this is on a seasonally adjusted basis. It's 3,197,300. And then when we look at February of 2020, that's 3,153,600. And when we're talking about the labor force participation rate, remember we're dividing the labor force divided by 16 plus population estimate. So while those two numbers are different, the labor force participation rate is the same. Yeah, Matt, I did mention that Greeley's recovery rate is lagging the rest of the state at 31%. That really is due to energy industry and possibly some parts of construction. Construction across the state is really not recovered as well as most industries. And so I would attribute Greeley's slow recovery to energy sector. Ed, you ask, let's see, what is the surge in labor force participants? Where are they coming from? Are these folks who have sat out since the start of the pandemic, or are they coming from elsewhere? Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of people who sat out for the pandemic and now for maybe a number of different reasons are re-entering the labor force, as in they're actively seeking work, employment opportunities. And we're also seeing an uptick in new entrants, which is again, primarily that's driven by students. So it could also be driven by people moving to the state, but I don't have any great data to back that up. So I think it's really a mixture of individuals that's driving that labor force participation. Again, it's compared to the rest of the nation, very strong for Colorado.
And Ryan, I can jump in here and take a question that's from Serena Ung, which asks, why are there still so many problems with ID.me verifying people's unemployment claims, and that they're still getting a lot of emails daily from desperate people who are owed unemployment benefits? First, I want to clarify for you, Serena, almost 221,000 individuals as of this date have had their identities verified through ID.me successfully, and over 142,000 of those individuals have had items cleared on their claims, allowing them to pay. There are obviously various reasons why individuals may be having difficulty. Some individuals lack the technological means to actually participate in that program through ID.me. So again, the reminder there is that we ask those individuals to use our virtual agent online or to call our call center at 303-536-5615. So I want to make it clear here. We want to clear up that we are offering in-person help for individuals who do not have access to a smartphone to complete ID.me, but that needs to occur through that request at that call center. Staff will review the information necessary, determine whether an in-person visit is required, contact you, and set up those in-person visits. There are other means. There are some individuals who, even if we had them come in person, would not be able to successfully pass ID.me, and we work with those individuals to further verify their identity so that they can receive the unemployment insurance benefits to which they are entitled and eligible. Of other notes, Serena, some individuals contacting you may have been cleared by ID.me, but there are certain fraudulent characteristics on their claim that require additional investigation, and so those additional investigations occur on those. Sometimes this results in an individual that at some point in time has their unemployment insurance claim, but somehow went online and managed to complete our online fraud form, so somehow reported their claim as fraudulent in nature. Again, that happens on occasion. That's not with everybody. So it's a wide variety of reasons, Serena. In addition, overall wait times for a trusted referee have been coming down. Again, we would like to see them lower. We are sure that individuals trying to verify their identities would like to see them lower. And ID.me continues to work in that space by continuing to onboard new staff and additional staff to meet those needs of customers. So another quick reminder that ID.me is just like all these states when they were initially hit with unemployment insurance claims. Additional states continue to come on board with ID.me. As states do not join ID.me, they see upticks in the amount of fraud that's occurring in their systems. And as such, then they tend to join ID.me and try to push a bunch of individuals through ID.me at that same time that are then competing with our customers, California's customers, and other state customers at that same time. So there are various reasons why somebody may have some difficulty there, Serena.
Thanks, Phil. And this is Joe. I'm going to try to answer the several questions I think that Sloan has in the chat box. And so, I want to remind you all, if you could go back to February of 2020, Colorado was below 3% unemployment. We were in a worker shortage, skilled worker shortage, and all businesses were having trouble finding workers. So worker shortages, because we've gone through 14, 15 months of the pandemic, aren't going to magically go away when we start coming out of the pandemic. We're still in a oversupply of jobs and an undersupply of available workers. And so as we come out of the recession and open up at 100%, certain sectors are going to have a hard time finding positions. And so we know there are people that are on the fence about returning to work because of valid health concerns, and maybe they're at a place where they can return to work. So we think the Colorado Jumpstart program will help people make that decision to return to work and have some financial incentive to do so. We also rely on small businesses to take advantage of this program when they're hiring. Make sure that when they make an offer that they make sure that their candidates take advantage and opt into this program if they're on unemployment insurance. And so we need businesses, small businesses, to know about the program and use it as an incentive to attract workers to fill their positions. At this time, we know we have larger employers that are offering incentives, one-time bonuses. We saw over this week that major companies have committed to increasing their minimum wage to $15 and even $20 an hour, giving $1,000 hiring bonuses. So they're competing with big companies as they're trying to find workers as well. But, I think our memories are really short that, we've been through a really rough period of 15 months, but going into this, Colorado's unemployment was below 3%, and we were in an oversupply of jobs and an undersupply of workers, a worker shortage. And just because we've gone through 15 months, we're not a miracle is going to happen where we can come out of that. We have to deal with that situation. And just numbers from 1 month is not enough data for us to decide that the shortages are sector industry-wide in Colorado. We know there are a few sectors that are having critical needs right now, but it's not in every sector or every industry, as Ryan just mentioned in his detailed report.
One other thing I want to mention too, when we talk about, what can employers do? And again, I'm going to go from the data perspective here. Something I've talked about a bit is this concept of involuntary part-time. And these are individuals who work part-time but prefer full-time work. And really, during the entirety of the pandemic, it's been really at a high rate, higher than the Great Recession. And in March, that rate was about 5% of the labor force was involuntary part-time. Again, that's pretty similar to what it was during the Great Recession. And that was equivalent to around 160,000 individuals or so. What's interesting, though, is that in April, we saw a huge drop in involuntary part-time to under 120,000. And that's about a rate of around 4% of the labor force. And so what that shows me is that potentially individuals, some of this labor shortage, again, pockets of the state, pockets of various sectors like leisure and hospitality. This could be an indication that individuals are getting more hours, that they actually want more hours. Another thing that I like to look at is the share of workers that are employed full-time. And again, this is only 1 month, but I did see a significant uptick in April for the number of Coloradans that are employed full-time. So there's still that workers that you currently have, right, that have the desire to have more hours. So that's something to consider. Tamara, for wages, right now, I probably avoid looking at wages in terms of over the year growth because mainly it's due to base effect. We had such again, when we compared to last April, it's such a volatile disruption to the economy, particularly with low wage workers, that looking at wages over the year it's pretty volatile to look at. And I'm going to probably wait a few months to start looking at wage trends. So sorry, I can't give you more on that, but right now I would just, wage trends are difficult to assess at this point.
And Ryan, I think I can jump in and answer Tamara's other question, but just quickly for all of you on this call, as I had talked about those scams and phishing emails and texts, and let you know at the very beginning of the press call, I became aware of a brand new one. 30 seconds ago, I received yet another email of another text scam that is going around with yet a different URL link on there. So again, I cannot express to you how important it is to get that message out to claimants who may read or listen to your media on there. So Tamara, you're asking about Jumpstart now available to part-time workers. Yes, in other words, individuals who obtain gainful employment, Tamara. There are some individuals who have always worked part-time, and so for them, when they go back to work, part-time is fully engaged in the labor market. And so what will be the driver for those individuals is actually if they've returned to work and their earnings are something that equals or exceeds the weekly benefit amount of their unemployment insurance claim, they would also be eligible to participate in the program by going to opt into that program. Because if their wages equal or exceed their weekly benefit amount while they're at work, they're not going to receive any unemployment insurance benefits from us. So they would qualify to be able to participate and receive that benefit on the bonus or the incentive, sorry. The incentive would pay the same for those individuals as it will for somebody who's back 32 hours or more per week. In other words, if they've accepted that employment that's gainful employment such that they would not be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits, between now and the end of May, it's $1,600. And if that occurs for them in June, then it would be $1,200.
Thanks, Phil. I'm going to try to answer Ed's question in regards to how many people are on state unemployment insurance. And I think as the week ending May 8th, Ed, there were just under, I believe, 58,324. In looking at the eligibility for the Colorado Jumpstart program, those people that are on extended unemployment insurance that are W-2 employees would be eligible for Jumpstart as well, correct, Phil? And that number was about 70,000. So Ryan, is that about right? But not all of those are on state W-2 employees. They could be extended under the PUA program as well. So that's why there's a discrepancy in that number, Ed.
Yeah, I think that's basically right. If we look at the unique count of individuals filing a continued claim within a given week, and we provide this in the in the weekly press release data packet. Yeah, for the week ending the 15th, it was about 66,000 individuals requesting payment through the PEUC program, 40,000 through PUA, and about 54,700 through regular UI. So I hope that helps.
Joe, Charles has a question about the FPUC benefits and whether or not we will be getting rid of those early. Do you want to address that?
I can see in the question, it just says, and FPUC from Charles. Charles, you want to ask your question so I answer it correctly? Or Jessica, if you know what it is, you can ask me. I'm only seeing...
In an earlier chat, he asked if we are going to be blocking people's access to FPUC money as other states have done.
No, I think I referenced that in my talking points. At this point, we do not have the data that shows that all sectors wide and in Colorado, there's a worker shortage. We know there are some pain points in certain occupations and industries right now, but we have no intention to recommend to the governor to discontinue the use of the extension of those programs to the American Rescue Plan. Data may change and that could be different in July, but at this point, you know, we can only recommend to the governor and he makes that decision.
Joe, you're on mute.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica. Addressing Sloan's additional question, funding for this program. The $500,000 was the authority of the governor to let the Unemployment Insurance Division here at CDLE administer the program. Want to remind people that the Unemployment Insurance Program is a federal program, and we have certain rules and regulations that only allow us to just administer federally appropriated funds. So these would have to be covered by other funds. And so that was the $500,000 for us to get that up and running program and start taking eligibility and paying those benefits. The funding for this, as we put in the chat earlier, $37 to $57 million is coming from other sources of federal stimulus that will pay these benefits. And so as we go through the program, we hope a lot of people use it, and we hope we have to ask for more money as people return to work and they take advantage of this incentive bonus and come off the unemployment insurance rolls, both the state programs as well as the federal programs. And as the EA said, this Colorado Jumpstart Incentive Return to Work program is for the month of May and for the month of June.
And I think, Joe, I'll just jump in because it also leads inevitably to another question. So Sloan, just to make it abundantly clear to you, funds from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund cannot be utilized to make these payments. And funds that are received from the United States Department of Labor in the form of our administrative grant to usually provide unemployment insurance benefits may also not be utilized for this program. We've instituted a program similar in the past where we had to do appropriate cost allocations with US Dole, which was the stimulus payment that was made last year of $375. So we've gotten used to how can we do this and how can we administer it and appropriately charge time for staff to those various other accounts, such that we are not utilizing any of those funds that come from employer paid premiums to administer that program. And as Director Varela said, if additional individuals are taking advantage of it during this month-and-a-half period of time, there's certainly the ability to request additional funds from those other sources.
And Charles, I think that covered your question. We are prepared if this is overwhelmingly successful and we have a demand that we don't anticipate from who might be eligible, those W-2 employee workers, we will be more than happy to go to the governor and ask him if he could find us more money, or it may be first come, first serve, and we don't have the resources to extend it beyond the month of June. So I'll just leave it at that. I hope people are able and available to go to work, and I hope small businesses get the workers they need as they need them. So we're trying to do everything we can to be helpful to both workers and to our business community here in Colorado.
Sorry, if I can just make one more quick point. So in April, we had about 16,000 first pays in regular UI, meaning these are individuals who are recently laid off and qualified to receive benefit payments. That's about 3.5 times higher than the number of first pays that we saw, say, in April of 2019. So I just want to still emphasize that economy is very dynamic. We're still seeing, relatively high levels of claims activity, and just to kind of keep that in mind when we're talking about, the impact of the labor force.
I think Sloan is still asking for some clarification. Can you talk about the difference in people getting back into the workforce and people taking advantage of unemployment? We hear all the time that people don't want to get back into the workforce because they are getting paid well on unemployment. Sloan, I wish I had an easy answer for this. Unfortunately, there are a lot of low paying jobs that have grown over the last decade from the Great Recession. The number one industry and the number one growth was the service sector. I think Ryan would agree with me on that. And they were in the low wage industries, occupations. Those are the ones that are impacted now. And so, we're talking about unemployment. I always say that probably with the $300 plus up and maybe $250 on regular or pandemic unemployment, that's about $550, $600 a week. In a month, that's a little over $2,200. At this time, unemployment may be paying those people more money, but that doesn't come with benefits. It doesn't come with health insurance. It doesn't come. It's going to end in September, and so we want those people to return to work before that program ends. We think the incentive will help people make that decision as they return to work, with a little bit of financial incentive to do so and some money up front to deal with the cost of returning to work. I'm sorry that you're hearing that people don't want to return to work. I'm not hearing that story. I think there are legitimate reasons why people haven't made the decision to return to a low paying job. I also hear there are good reasons why people have left low paying industries and are getting upskilled and retrained and moving into other industries where they can have schedules that are consistent, or they can work full time 40 hours a week, or they can budget for the month or annually with a better skilled or a higher skilled job. And so we're going to have to deal with that as we deal with continued worker shortages, not because of the pandemic, because population is going down, because males are leaving the workforce in record numbers at earlier ages, because women have left the workforce during this pandemic, because the service industry is primarily made up of women workers, the care industry as well, education industry. And so we have some structural issues that we need to fix as a country, as a state, that have nothing to do with unemployment or the pandemic. So if you have any ideas, I'd appreciate that you share those with us, because we are exploring those every day.
And I can touch a little bit on that too, Joe. So Sloan, it's important to remember when you hear about that all the time, that becomes anecdotal. There isn't necessarily data that supports that at this point in time. However, with that said, we are aware that employers tell us this off and on, that individuals are refusing work or not showing up for interviews because they find out that they're earning more on unemployment. So a quick reminder that for individuals who are actually receiving that FPUC, the extra $300 per week, if an individual refuses work, and the real reason that they refuse that work is so that they can continue to receive the $300 per week. In other words, I'm refusing to work because I get paid better on unemployment than I would for that job. The way that the Congress wrote that legislation considers that to be a fraudulent act, which at that point in time cuts that individual off from receiving any and all additional FPUC payments. In addition, under our state law, an individual who refuses an offer of suitable employment is denied unemployment insurance benefits for a period of 20 weeks, effective the date in which that refusal occurred. And benefits on that claim are reduced by 20 weeks, or the remaining benefit amount, whichever is lesser. And for those, again, we still have online for employers to be able to go online to report those job refusals as they occur. And we have staff that process those again each and every day to determine the actual reason why a job was refused.
Okay, I think we're getting close to the end. I want to thank everyone for your attention today. I appreciate your willingness to get the information and help accurately report that and share as we try to help our small businesses, all our businesses, get back to a full recovery. And when we know when people are safe, healthy, and can return to work, that will happen. So with that, I'm going to say the next Thursday, May 27th, will be the last time we send out a weekly claims data press release. Moving forward, we will send out our typical monthly employment situation reports and host a corresponding press call to go over all claims and labor force data and provide any necessary updates. Again, that will move to monthly starting in the month of June. We began implementing these weekly reports when we were experiencing unprecedented increases in claims and workloads as a means to provide additional transparency when the pandemic shutdown dealt its initial blow to the economy. We're making the shift back to a monthly cadence so our UI and our LMI teams can focus their efforts on getting people back to work. Thank you for joining us. I hope you continue to be well, and I thank you for your interest as we continue to keep Colorado working. Be well, everyone.